My sister had a wedding and I wasn't invited. My husband doesn't want you there. He thinks you're pathetic. In response, I canceled her honeymoon, sold her home, and ended all contact with her. I found out about Rachel's wedding 3 weeks after it happened. Not from her, obviously. From a cousin who assumed I'd been there and casually mentioned how beautiful the ceremony was. The confusion on my face must have said everything because she went pale and changed the subject fast. 28 years. That's how long I'd been Rachel's brother. We grew up in the same house, shared the same parents, survived the same awkward family dinners. I thought we were close. Not best friends, maybe, but solid. The kind of siblings who'd show up when it mattered. Apparently, I was wrong. When I finally confronted her, she didn't apologize. She didn't even pretend to feel bad about it. We met at a coffee shop near her apartment, and she showed up 15 minutes late wearing oversized sunglasses like she was trying to hide from paparazzi. The moment she sat down, I could tell she'd rehearsed whatever she was about to say. Marcus didn't want you there, she said, stirring her latte with mechanical precision. He thinks you're pathetic. The business thing, the divorce, all of it. He didn't want that energy at our wedding. Marcus. Her husband of exactly 21 days. A guy she'd been dating for 8 months. 8 months, and suddenly his opinion mattered more than nearly 3 decades of shared history. Energy? I repeated. My voice came out flat, emotionless. I was too stunned to be angry yet. You know what I mean. She wouldn't look at me. Just kept stirring that drink like it held answers. You've been struggling. We wanted a positive day. No complications. The business thing she mentioned was my tech startup folding 6 months earlier. 3 years of work, gone. My divorce had finalized 2 months before that. Jennifer took the house, half my savings, and any remaining faith I had in my judgment of character. I'd been rebuilding from scratch, working a consulting job I hated, living in a 1-bedroom apartment that smelled like the previous tenant's cat. But pathetic? That word sat in my chest like a stone. So you just decided I shouldn't exist that day? Rachel finally met my eyes. Don't make this dramatic, Kevin. It was one day. You're my brother. That doesn't change. You're right, I said quietly. It doesn't change. It already changed. I left cash for my untouched coffee and walked out. She called after me, but I didn't turn around. 3 weeks of pretending I didn't exist, and she expected me to understand. To accept it. To smile and move on like it was nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, each word cutting deeper than the last. Pathetic. Complications. No energy. Like I was a problem to be managed rather than family to be loved. Around 2 in the morning, anger finally caught up with the hurt. I started thinking about everything I knew about Rachel's life. Her meticulously planned honeymoon to Santorini. The house she'd just bought with Marcus in the suburbs, the one she'd been renovating for months. The job at the marketing firm where she just made junior partner. She'd built this perfect little life, and I wasn't good enough to witness even one day of it. Fine. The first thing I remembered was the house. 3 years ago, when Rachel was scrambling to afford her first property, she'd asked me for help. Not money, exactly. I'd co-signed her mortgage. At the time, my credit was excellent, my business was thriving, and she was my sister. Of course I'd helped her. The paperwork was still in my filing cabinet. I pulled it out at 3 in the morning, sitting on my apartment floor with documents spread around me like evidence at a crime scene. There it was, plain as day. My name right next to hers. Legal responsibility. Legal rights. I wasn't thinking clearly. Or maybe I was thinking more clearly than I had in months. By dawn, I had a plan. The mortgage company opened at 9. I was on the phone at 9:02. I explained the situation, carefully and calmly. My sister and I had a falling out. I wanted to discuss my options as a co-signer. Could I force a sale? What were my rights? The representative put me on hold twice. When she came back, her voice had that careful, rehearsed quality of someone delivering news they knew would cause chaos. As a co-signer with equal legal standing on the property title, you do have the right to petition for partition and sale, she said. Especially if you can demonstrate financial risk or irreparable relationship breakdown. But I should warn you, this is typically a last resort. It can take months, and it often destroys family relationships. That ship has sailed, I told her. I spent the rest of that week consulting with a real estate attorney. Her name was Patricia, and she had the weary eyes of someone who'd seen every variation of family drama. She listened to my story without judgment, took notes in precise handwriting, and finally leaned back in her chair. I can do this for you, she said. But you need to understand what you're starting. This will hurt her. Financially, emotionally, all of it. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about being erased from my own sister's wedding. About Marcus, who barely knew me, deciding I was pathetic. About Rachel looking me in the eye and justifying it all like I was being unreasonable for feeling hurt. Completely certain. The legal notice arrived at Rachel's house 8 days later. Patricia filed a partition action, citing irreconcilable differences and my need to extract myself from joint financial obligations. The petition requested the court order the property sold and proceeds divided according to ownership percentage. Rachel called me 17 times in 2 hours. I didn't answer. She showed up at my apartment that evening, pounding on the door hard enough to make my neighbor poke his head out to see what was happening. "Kevin, open this door right now." I opened it. She looked nothing like the composed woman in the coffee shop. Her hair was tangled, makeup smeared from crying, still wearing what looked like pajama pants and a stained sweatshirt. "You can't do this," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "That house is mine. Marcus and I just moved in. We've been renovating. You can't just force me to sell it." "Actually, I can." I closed the door quietly. "You might want to check with your attorney, but mine was very clear about my rights." "This is insane. This is cruel. What is wrong with you?" The irony of her calling me cruel wasn't lost on me. I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, watching her pace my tiny living room like a caged animal. "What's wrong with me?" I repeated. "You excluded me from your wedding because your husband of 8 months thinks I'm pathetic. You didn't invite me, didn't tell me, didn't even have the decency to give me a heads up that I was being cut out. And now you're surprised there are consequences? That's different. That was one day. It was my sister's wedding. It was supposed to matter. And you decided I wasn't worth the space I'd take up." Rachel stopped pacing. For just a moment, something that might have been guilt flickered across her face. Then it hardened into anger again. "So you're going to ruin my life? Force me out of my home? That's your solution?" "I'm exercising my legal rights as a cosigner who wants out of a financial obligation. Nothing more, nothing less. We can't afford another house right now. Marcus just started his business, we used all our savings on renovations, the honeymoon is already paid for." She trailed off, as if suddenly realizing she'd said too much. "The honeymoon? I'd almost forgotten about that. When do you leave for Santorini?" I asked casually. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. 2 weeks. Why? Just curious. Hope you enjoy it." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe I was someone different now. Someone who'd learned that family loyalty was conditional, that love had limits, that being pathetic meant being disposable. "I don't know who you've become," she said quietly. "But this isn't you. You're right. The old me would have co-signed your mortgage, supported you through everything, and shown up to your wedding with a smile and a gift. But you didn't want that person there. So now you get this version instead." She left without another word. I listened to her footsteps fade down the hallway, heard the elevator ding, and then silence. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. But I also felt something else. Something that had been missing since that coffee shop conversation. I felt like I mattered. The honeymoon was easier than I expected. Rachel had used my email address as a backup contact when she booked everything, probably because she'd set it up back when we were still on good terms. The confirmation emails were all still in my inbox, neatly organized in a folder I'd meant to delete but never got around to. One call to the resort, a quick verification of the booking reference, and a calm explanation that there had been a family emergency requiring cancellation. They were sympathetic. These things happen. The cancellation policy was strict, but they could offer a partial refund minus the deposit and processing fees. "Should we send the refund to the card on file?" the representative asked. "That would be perfect," I said. The card on file was Rachel's, but the refund would take 6 to 8 weeks to process. By then, she'd have figured out what happened. By then, it wouldn't matter. I hung up and stared at my phone. 2 moves down. Both legal. Both consequences of choices she'd made. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, "Call me now." I didn't call. I knew exactly what she'd say. Rachel had clearly run to our parents, painting me as the villain, and Mom would want to mediate. To fix this. To remind me that family forgives. But forgiveness requires acknowledgement. It requires remorse. Rachel had offered neither. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a client call when my assistant knocked and said there was someone waiting who claimed it was urgent. I wrapped up the call and found him sitting in our lobby, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit and designer watch. We'd met exactly twice before. Once at a family dinner where he'd spent most of the evening on his phone, and once at a birthday party for my mother where he'd made a passive-aggressive comment about my former success in front of everyone. "Kevin." He stood when I approached, offering his hand. I didn't take it. "Marcus. What can I do for you?" His jaw tightened at the coldness in my voice, but he maintained composure. "Can we talk somewhere private?" I led him to a conference room and closed the door. He didn't sit. Neither did I. "You need to drop this lawsuit," he said without preamble. "Rachel is falling apart. She hasn't slept in days. This is affecting her health, her job, everything. That's unfortunate. His expression darkened. Look, I get it. You're upset about the wedding. Rachel explained the whole thing to me. But this is way out of proportion. You're destroying her life over one decision. One decision, I repeated. You thought I was pathetic. You convinced her I wasn't worth inviting. Now you get to see exactly how pathetic I'm not. That's not, he stopped himself, recalibrating. I never said that. Rachel misunderstood. She was stressed about the wedding, trying to keep the guest list small, and things got miscommunicated. So you're saying you wanted me there? The hesitation was brief but damning. It wasn't personal. Everything about excluding someone from a wedding is personal. I checked my watch pointedly. I have another meeting in 5 minutes. Was there anything else? The house sale will take months, Marcus said, desperation creeping into his voice. Can't we work something out? I'll buy out your share. We can refinance, remove you from the mortgage. Just drop the partition action. You can't afford it. You said yourself you spent all your savings on renovations. I'll figure it out. I'll get a loan. Talk to my parents. Something. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered Rachel's voice in that coffee shop. He thinks you're pathetic. All the sympathy evaporated. You have until the court date to make an offer, I said. If it's reasonable and verified by my attorney, I'll consider it. Otherwise, the house sells. You're really going to do this? It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I really am. He left looking smaller than when he'd arrived. I went back to my desk and tried to focus on work, but my hands were shaking. Adrenaline, maybe. Or the slow realization of what I'd set in motion. That night, I got an email from the Santorini resort. A courtesy notification that the booking had been cancelled as requested. They hoped everything was all right with my family and looked forward to welcoming us in the future. Rachel figured it out 2 days before they were supposed to leave. She called from an unknown number, probably knowing I wouldn't answer if I saw her name. You cancelled our honeymoon. Her voice was barely above a whisper. How could you? Wrong number, I said and hung up. She tried twice more from different numbers. I blocked them all. Update 1. It's been 6 weeks since I posted the original story. I wasn't planning to update, but enough people asked what happened, and honestly, writing this out has been more therapeutic than I expected. So here's where things stand. The house sold. Not at auction like I'd threatened, but through a negotiated sale that my attorney arranged. Marcus tried to secure financing to buy me out, but apparently his new business wasn't doing well enough to support the loan he needed. Their options were limited: sell voluntarily or wait for the court to force it. They chose to sell voluntarily. Smart move, actually. It gave them some control over timing and price. The market in their area was decent, and the renovations they'd done added value. Patricia kept me updated throughout the process, her emails clinical and professional, never acknowledging the emotional warfare playing out behind the legal language. The sale closed 3 weeks ago. After the mortgage was paid off, closing costs handled, and everything divided according to our ownership percentages, I received a check for $63,000. Rachel got slightly more, around $78,000, because she contributed more to the down payment. I deposited my check and felt absolutely nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a bank balance that was healthier than it had been in months and a family that was shattered beyond recognition. My mother finally cornered me at my aunt's birthday dinner. I'd been avoiding family events, but my aunt specifically asked me to come, and she'd always been kind to me. I couldn't say no to her. Mom waited until I was alone in the kitchen, refilling my drink. She closed the door behind her with a quiet click that felt ominous. 60 days, she said. You've been punishing your sister for 60 days. I haven't been punishing anyone. I've been handling my finances. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was about money. You forced her to sell her home. You ruined her honeymoon. You won't return her calls or speak to her. This is cruelty, Kevin. I set my glass down carefully, buying time to control my voice. Did she tell you why she didn't invite me to her wedding? She said it was complicated. That Marcus was concerned about guest list size and dynamics. She said he thought I was pathetic. That my presence would bring bad energy. She looked me in the eye and told me it was just one day, like that made it acceptable. My mother's face shifted. I watched her process this information, saw the moment she understood she hadn't been given the full story. She said that? Word for word. She sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. Suddenly she looked older than her 62 years. I didn't know that part, she admitted quietly. She told me there were space constraints. That it was a small wedding. She made it sound reasonable. It wasn't reasonable. It was calculated. And when I reacted, when I did something about it, suddenly I'm the villain. Everyone's ready to forgive her and condemn me. Nobody asked why I was hurt. Nobody acknowledged that what she did was wrong. They just expected me to absorb it and move on. So you destroyed her life instead? The question hung in the air between us. Outside the kitchen, I could hear laughter from the party. My aunt's voice, bright and happy. Someone telling a story. Normal family sounds from a family I no longer felt part of. I didn't destroy her life, I said finally. I removed myself from her financial obligations and made it clear there are consequences for treating people like they're disposable. She still has Marcus. She still has her job. They'll find another place to live. They can plan another trip. None of this is permanent for her. And for you? I met my mother's eyes. I don't know yet. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft, familiar. The same hand that had held mine at countless doctor's appointments, school events, difficult moments. I understand why you're hurt, she said. I do. What Rachel did was wrong. I'm going to talk to her about it, properly this time. But Kevin, this path you're on. It's not going to heal anything. It's just going to leave you more alone. I'm already alone. At least now everyone knows it. I left the party shortly after that. My aunt hugged me goodbye and slipped a container of leftovers into my hands, the way she always did. Small kindnesses that reminded me not everyone had given up on me. Rachel tried to reach out once during this time. Not a phone call or text, but a letter. An actual handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. I found it slipped under my door one evening when I got home from work. I almost threw it away unopened. My hand hovered over the trash can for a full minute. But curiosity won. The letter was 3 pages long, her handwriting neat and controlled, though I could see places where the pen had pressed harder, where emotion had leaked through. Kevin, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to explain. But I need to try. When I met Marcus, everything felt right in a way nothing had before. He was confident, successful, everything I thought I wanted. And maybe I was so desperate to keep that feeling that I lost sight of what mattered. He did say things about you. About your divorce, your business failing. He framed it as concern about negativity at the wedding, and I convinced myself he was right. That it would be better, easier, cleaner if you weren't there. I told myself it was one day, that you'd understand, that our relationship was strong enough to survive it. I was wrong about all of it. Losing the house hurt. Losing the honeymoon hurt. But losing you hurts more than anything else. You're my brother. We grew up together. We were supposed to be there for each other. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can. But I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Not because of the lawsuit or the canceled trip, but because I made you feel like you didn't matter. Because I chose someone I'd known for 8 months over someone I'd known my entire life. If you're willing to talk, I'm here. If you're not, I understand. Rachel, I read it 3 times. Each time, I felt my anger soften slightly, replaced by something more complicated. Sadness, maybe. Or exhaustion. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because sorry doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the image of her stirring that latte, refusing to meet my eyes, justifying why I wasn't good enough to be included. The money from the house sale is sitting in my savings account. I haven't touched it. Part of me feels like using it would be admitting this was all about finances, about revenge, about being petty. The truth is messier than that. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to have something important taken away. To have plans destroyed, stability threatened, to feel powerless and excluded from decisions that affected you. I think I succeeded. But success doesn't feel like I thought it would. Work has been good, at least. The consulting firm offered me a permanent position with a substantial raise. I accepted. I moved into a better apartment, one that doesn't smell like phantom cats. Small improvements that feel hollow when I come home to silence every night. Jennifer, my ex-wife, reached out last week. We haven't spoken since the divorce finalized. Her message was brief, heard about you and Rachel. I'm sorry. I know how much family meant to you. Meant. Past tense. Like she already knew what I was still figuring out. I thanked her for the message. We didn't continue the conversation. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Several people have asked if I regret what I did. That's the question I keep coming back to. Do I regret forcing the sale of Rachel's house? Canceling her honeymoon? Cutting off contact? The honest answer is I don't know. I regret that it came to this. I regret that my sister chose her new husband's opinion over decades of sibling relationship. I regret that our family is fractured now, probably permanently. But do I regret standing up for myself, demanding consequences, refusing to accept being treated like I was disposable? No. I don't regret that part. My therapist, who I started seeing a month ago, says I'm conflating punishment with boundaries. That there's a difference between protecting yourself and actively trying to harm someone else. We're working on figuring out which category my actions fall into. I suspect it's both. The legal proceedings are completely finished now. The house is sold, The money distributed, all paperwork signed and filed. Patricia sent me a final invoice and a brief note, "Good luck with everything." Professional to the end. Rachel and Marcus found an apartment across town. Smaller than the house, I'm sure. Probably not the life they'd envisioned when they got married. I know this because my mother mentioned it during a phone call, her voice carefully neutral, giving me information without asking me to do anything about it. I didn't ask for more details. I didn't want them. The Santorini cancellation came back to bite them harder than I expected. When Rachel tried to rebook, the resort had no availability for the next 18 months. Peak season, apparently. They ended up taking a long weekend to a bed and breakfast in Vermont instead. My mother mentioned this too, with the same careful neutrality. I felt a flicker of something when I heard that. Guilt, maybe. Or satisfaction. Or both. This is what revenge looks like in real life. Not clean, not satisfying, not redemptive. Just messy and complicated and leaving everyone worse off than before. I still haven't responded to Rachel's letter. It's sitting on my desk, folded and creased from being read too many times. Every few days, I think about writing back. About trying to find words that explain how I feel. But every time I start, I realize I don't know how I feel. Angry? Hurt? Vindicated? Ashamed? All of it. None of it. Something in between. My aunt called yesterday. Not to mediate or convince me to reconcile, just to check in. We talked about mundane things, her garden, my new apartment, a movie she'd watched. At the end of the call, she said something that's been echoing in my head since. "You know, Kevin, being right doesn't always mean you're happy." She's correct. I was right to be hurt. Right to feel betrayed. Right to demand acknowledgement and consequences. But right and happy are different things. And I'm not happy. I don't know what comes next. Whether Rachel and I will ever speak again. Whether our family can survive this fracture. Whether I'll wake up one day and regret everything, or feel justified, or just feel nothing at all. For now, I'm existing in this strange in-between space. Not the person I was before the wedding I wasn't invited to, but not sure who I'm becoming instead. Update 2. 4 months since the first update. A lot has happened. Some of it expected, most of it not. Marcus left Rachel. I found out through my mother again, her voice tight with controlled emotion on the phone. He'd apparently been having doubts for a while, felt too much pressure, couldn't handle the financial stress of starting over after losing the house. The excuse changed depending on who was telling the story, but the result was the same. He moved out 6 weeks ago, filed for separation, and Rachel is living alone in that apartment I never saw. My mother was careful not to frame it as my fault. She's learned, over these months, that direct accusations only make me retreat further. But I could hear the implication. I could feel the weight of what she wasn't saying. I felt strange when I heard the news. Not victorious. Not even particularly sorry. Just numb. Like I'd been watching a movie and someone had spoiled the ending, and now I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel about it. "She's not doing well," my mother said carefully. "She's been calling in sick to work. Barely leaving the apartment." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's your sister. Because despite everything, I think you still care." I wanted to argue. To say I didn't care, that Rachel had made her choices and now lived with them, that this had nothing to do with me. But I couldn't make the words come out. "What do you want me to do?" I asked instead. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe just know that she's struggling." We ended the call shortly after. I sat in my living room for a long time, watching the sun set through my new apartment's windows, thinking about choices and consequences and how messily they tangle together. The thing nobody tells you about revenge is what comes after. The initial rush fades. The justification starts to feel hollow. You're left sitting with the reality of what you've done, and the person you've hurt doesn't exist in abstract anymore. They're real and broken, and sometimes the breaking cascades in ways you didn't predict. Did I break Rachel's marriage? No. Marcus was clearly a weak foundation to build a life on if he couldn't handle a few months of financial stress. But did I apply pressure that exposed those cracks? Did I accelerate something that might have ended anyway? Probably. I started having dreams about the wedding I wasn't invited to. Weird, vivid dreams where I was there but invisible. I'd watch Rachel walk down the aisle, see Marcus waiting at the altar, see my parents smiling in the front row. And I'd be standing in the back, trying to call out, trying to make them see me, but no sound would come. I mentioned this to my therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen. She has a way of listening that makes silence feel productive rather than awkward. "What do you think the dreams are telling you?" she asked. That I wanted to be there. Even after everything, some part of me still wanted to be included. "And what does that mean for where you are now?" Good question. One I didn't have an answer to. The money from the house sale was still sitting in my account, virtually untouched. I'd used some for the new apartment's deposit and furniture, but most of it just accumulated interest, a reminder of everything that had happened. I started looking at it differently. Not as victory spoils or just compensation, but as a problem I didn't know how to solve. Rachel sent another letter 3 weeks after Marcus left. This one was shorter, her handwriting shakier. Kevin, Marcus is gone. I'm sure Mom told you. Everything fell apart so quickly. I keep thinking about that day in the coffee shop. How easily I dismissed your feelings. How I let someone else's opinion matter more than yours. How I thought I could just explain it away and you'd understand. I was so focused on building this perfect life that I didn't notice I was destroying the foundations that actually mattered. You were right to be angry. You were right to feel betrayed. I'm not sure you were right about everything you did after that, but I understand why you did it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I took from you. It wasn't just a wedding invitation. It was the knowledge that you mattered to me. And you did. You do. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to figure that out. Rachel, I read this letter once and put it in my desk drawer with the first one. Then I sat down and did something I hadn't done in 4 months. I wrote back. My letter was even shorter than hers. Rachel, I'm sorry about Marcus. Despite everything, I didn't want you to hurt like this. I need time. I don't know how much. Maybe a lot. Maybe forever. But I'm not ready to talk yet. Take care of yourself. Kevin. I mailed it before I could overthink it. 3 sentences. Barely an acknowledgement. But it was something. Dr. Chen asked me the next week why I'd decided to respond. Because being right was starting to feel like being alone, I said. And I'm tired of being alone. What would not being alone look like? I don't know. Maybe having a sister again. Eventually. Maybe just knowing that door isn't completely closed. Even after everything she did? Even after everything we both did. Work announced layoffs 2 months ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. After finally getting stable, after accepting the permanent position, the consulting firm lost a major client and needed to cut costs. I wasn't let go, but the fear of it sent me spiraling back to the months after my business failed. The uncertainty, the financial anxiety, the feeling of standing on ice that might crack at any moment. I found myself thinking about Rachel during those weeks. About how Marcus left when money got tight, when stability fractured. About how I'd contributed to that instability, had weaponized it even, and now faced a smaller version of the same fear myself. Life has a way of teaching lessons when you least want to learn them. I called my mother on her birthday. We talked for over an hour, more than we had since this all started. She told me about her garden, about my father's ongoing battle with his model train hobby taking over the garage, about my aunt's new cat. She didn't mention Rachel until I asked. How is she? A pause. Better than she was. She's been seeing someone. A therapist, I mean. She's trying to work through things. That's good. She asks about you sometimes. I never know what to tell her. Tell her I'm okay. Tell her I'm figuring things out. Are you? Figuring things out? Getting there, I think. Another pause, heavier than the first. You know, Kevin, what she did was wrong. I want you to know I understand that now. Fully. But what you did in response. It was understandable and also harmful. Both things can be true. I know. Do you? Because I'm not sure you've forgiven yourself for it. I hadn't. She was right about that. I'd spent months justifying my actions, explaining them, defending them. But forgiveness? That was different territory. I'm working on it, I said. The holidays approached with a dread I hadn't felt since high school. Thanksgiving was normally at my parents' house, a massive production with extended family and too much food and the comfortable chaos of people who'd known each other forever. My mother called a month before to ask about my plans. I don't think I can do the big family thing this year, I said. It's too complicated. Rachel said the same thing. Of course she had. We were both trapped in the same awkward dance, avoiding each other while avoiding seemed to hurt everyone else more than it hurt us. What if we did something smaller? My mother suggested. Just immediate family. You, me, your father, Rachel. No Marcus, no extended relatives. Just us. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm not asking you to reconcile. I'm asking you to sit at a table and eat turkey. You don't have to talk to her if you don't want to. But you're both my children, and I'd like to have Thanksgiving with both my children. The guilt was expertly applied. My mother had decades of practice. I'll think about it, I said. I thought about it for 3 weeks. Went back and forth so many times I gave myself mental whiplash. Dr. Chen worked overtime helping me process the decision. What's the worst that could happen? She asked. We sit there in horrible silence. Rachel tries to apologize again. I say something cruel because I'm uncomfortable. Everyone ends up feeling worse than before. And the best case? We eat turkey and make small talk and maybe remember that we used to be a family. Both outcomes are survivable. So the question isn't about worst or best case. It's about what you want to practice being. What do you mean? Do you want to practice being someone who holds grudges and maintains distance? Or someone who takes risks on connection even when it's uncomfortable? I showed up to Thanksgiving dinner 20 minutes late, my hands sweating despite the November cold. Rachel's car was already in the driveway. An older sedan, practical and unremarkable. Nothing like the luxury SUV she'd been driving when this all started. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face bright with relief. "You came. Don't make a big deal out of it." She hugged me anyway. Inside, the house smelled like home. Turkey and stuffing and my father's experimental sweet potato casserole that never quite worked but he made anyway. Rachel was in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any moment. She'd lost weight. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired and older and small in a way that made my chest hurt. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey." We stared at each other for a moment that stretched too long. My father appeared with a tray of appetizers, bless him, and the tension broke. "Kevin. Try these stuffed mushrooms. New recipe." Dinner was awkward but not awful. We talked about safe topics, work, the weather, a movie my parents had watched. Rachel spoke quietly, asking questions but not pushing when answers were brief. I caught her looking at me several times, something sad and hopeful in her expression. After the meal, while my parents were in the kitchen arguing about the proper way to store leftovers, Rachel and I ended up alone in the dining room. The silence felt heavy, full of things unsaid. "Thank you for coming," she finally said. "I know it wasn't easy." "No. It wasn't. I meant what I said in the letters. All of it." I studied the tablecloth, tracing the pattern with my finger. "I know. I'm just not sure what to do with that yet. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know." "Rachel." I looked up, met her eyes. "I'm sorry about Marcus leaving. Genuinely. I'm sorry about a lot of things. Most of all, I'm sorry about what I said that day. About you being pathetic. About any of it. You're my brother. You deserved better." My throat felt tight. "You deserved better from me too. What I did, the house, the honeymoon, it was vindictive. I wanted you to hurt like I was hurting, and I made that happen. That's not something I'm proud of. We both made mistakes." "Yeah. We did." We sat in that acknowledgement for a while. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not reconciliation. Just two people who'd hurt each other recognizing that hurt. When I left that evening, Rachel walked me to my car. The November air was cold enough to see our breath. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? Like we were before?" I thought about that. About the siblings we used to be, before weddings and divorces and failed businesses and all the ways life had complicated us. "I don't think we can go back," I said honestly. "But maybe we can build something different. Something forward instead of backward. I'd like that. Even if it takes a long time." "It probably will." She nodded, accepting this. "Drive safe. You too. Whenever you leave." I drove home through empty streets, thinking about family and forgiveness and how they're not always the same thing. About how being right didn't heal anything, but maybe admitting you were wrong could start too. My apartment felt different when I got home. Less like a refuge and more like a way station. A place I was staying while figuring out where I actually wanted to be. I pulled out my laptop and opened my bank account. That money from the house sale, sitting there like a question I hadn't answered. I stared at the number for a long time, then pulled up Rachel's contact information. I sent an email to Patricia, my attorney. Asked what would be involved in gifting money to someone, what the tax implications were, whether there were forms that needed to be filed. She responded within an hour, planning to give someone a substantial gift? I'd recommend consulting with a tax attorney, but generally gifts under a certain threshold don't require special paperwork. What amount are you considering? I did the math. My share from the house sale was $63,000. Half of that was $31,500. Enough to give Rachel a cushion while she rebuilt. Enough to help without enabling. Enough to say, "I'm sorry too." I drafted the email to Patricia, $30,000. To my sister. "Is there a way to do this anonymously?" Her response was quick. Anonymous would be difficult and potentially problematic legally. Might I suggest a simple bank transfer with a note? Sometimes the straightforward approach is best. I slept on it for 2 nights, drafted 3 versions of the note, deleted them all. Finally settled on something simple. "Rachel, this is half of what I received from the house sale. I kept the other half because I needed it, but I realized I don't need all of it. Not as much as you might need a fresh start. This isn't forgiveness yet. It's not reconciliation. It's just acknowledgement that what I did hurt you, and I don't want to keep profiting from that hurt. Use it however you need." Kevin. I initiated the transfer before I could overthink it. $30,000, moving from my account to hers with a few clicks. The most expensive apology I'd ever made. Rachel called 3 days later. I let it go to voicemail, not ready for a real conversation yet. Her message was crying and thank yous and disbelief. I listened to it twice, saved it, and went back to my regular evening. Dr. Chen asked the next week why I'd done it. Because holding on to anger was expensive in ways that had nothing to do with money, I said. And I wanted to practice being someone different. Who do you want to be? Someone who can admit when they went too far. Someone who values relationships more than being right. Someone who's not defined by the worst thing his sister did or the worst thing he did in response. That's a lot of someone's. I'm a work in progress. She smiled. We all are. Christmas was easier than Thanksgiving. Rachel and I texted a few times beforehand, logistics about gifts and timing. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. Just siblings coordinating. I bought her a journal, the nice kind with leather binding. Included a note, for writing the next chapter. She gave me a framed photo from our childhood. The two of us building a snowman, both laughing, maybe 7 and 9 years old. Before life got complicated. I found this in Mom's attic, she said when I opened it. Thought you might want it. I do. Thank you. We weren't fixed. We weren't back to how things were. But we were talking. We were trying. And sometimes that's what healing looks like, messy and incomplete and happening anyway. New Year's Eve found me alone in my apartment, which I'd planned. I'd had invitations, a party from work friends, dinner with my parents, even a cautious offer from Rachel to meet for coffee and watch the countdown together. I declined them all, needing space to think. At 11:30, I pulled out both of Rachel's letters and my draft responses. I read through the entire exchange, the hurt, the justifications, the slow thought towards something like understanding. Then I did something I hadn't done since this all started. I wrote her a real letter. Not a few sentences, but pages. Everything I'd been thinking and feeling and working through in therapy. The anger and the regret and the weird, complicated love that survived despite everything. I wrote about how betrayal feels, about how revenge feels hollow, about how forgiveness might be less about forgetting and more about choosing to move forward anyway. About how we were both imperfect people who'd handled things badly and maybe that was okay because we were both trying to handle things better now. I didn't mail it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But writing it felt important. Like documenting the journey from where I'd been to where I was going. The countdown started. 10, 9, 8. I could hear neighbors celebrating through the walls. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, Happy New Year. Here's to fresh starts. I texted back, to fresh starts. And to figuring out what that means. She responded with a simple heart emoji. I sent one back. Small gestures. Baby steps. A relationship being rebuilt from rubble, one careful brick at a time. 3 days into January, I ran into Marcus. Complete accident, a coffee shop neither of us usually frequented. He was ahead of me in line, didn't notice me until he turned around with his order. The recognition was mutual and uncomfortable. Kevin, he said. Marcus. Silence. The barista called another name. Someone's phone rang. How have you been? He finally asked, the question forced. Fine. You? Managing. Started over in a new city, actually. Fresh start seemed like a good idea. I wanted to say something cruel. To remind him how he'd called me pathetic, how his opinion had sparked this entire disaster. But looking at him, I just felt tired. That makes sense, I said instead. Sometimes you need distance to figure things out. He nodded, relieved at my tone. Yeah. Look, about everything that happened. It's done. Water under the bridge. Is it? With you and Rachel? We're working on it. Slowly. She deserves that. She's a good person. I wasn't in the right headspace to see it clearly, but she is. I ordered my coffee. Marcus lingered awkwardly for a moment, then nodded and left. I watched him go and felt nothing in particular. He was just a person now, not a villain or a catalyst. Just someone who'd briefly crossed through my life and left damage in his wake, the way we all do sometimes. February brought unexpected changes. The consulting firm, after months of layoff anxiety, landed a major new client. My position stabilized. I got assigned to projects I actually enjoyed. Work stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like building something. I moved again, this time to a bigger place with actual natural light and space for more than just existing. When I was packing up the old apartment, I found the letter I'd written to Rachel on New Year's Eve. I read it again, surprised by how raw it still felt. On impulse, I mailed it. She called when she received it, and this time I answered. I got your letter, she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. I know it's a lot. You don't have to respond if. No. I'm glad you sent it. It helped me understand things I didn't before. We talked for an hour. About everything and nothing. About the wedding, yes, but also about her therapy and mine, About Marcus leaving, about the money I'd sent, about whether we'd ever actually trust each other again. I don't know if trust is something we can rebuild, I admitted. But maybe we can build something new that doesn't need the same kind of trust. Something honest about our limitations. I'd settle for honest. Honest feels like progress. We started meeting for coffee once a month. No pressure, no expectations. Just siblings checking in. Sometimes we talked about the past. More often, we talked about the present, work, therapy, books, random observations about life. It wasn't friendship, exactly. It wasn't the easy closeness we'd had before. But it was something. Connection, maybe. Or the scaffolding that connection might eventually grow around. My mother stopped trying to force reconciliation and started just appreciating that we were speaking. Small victories, she called it. I thought about how right she was, how life is mostly small victories strung together, and how maybe that's enough. 8 months after the original incident, I got promoted. Team lead position, significant raise, actual authority. I took my parents out to celebrate, and on impulse, invited Rachel too. She came. Brought a card and a small gift, a desk plant for my new office. We sat through dinner making awkward jokes and sharing stories, and somewhere in the middle of dessert, Rachel laughed at something my father said. A real laugh, spontaneous and bright. I realized I hadn't heard her laugh like that in nearly a year. Maybe longer. What? She asked, noticing me watching her. Nothing. Just. It's good to hear you laugh. Her expression softened. It's good to have reasons too. We weren't healed. We weren't whole. But we were here, sharing a meal, trying. And that felt like something. Sometimes broken things don't go back to how they were. Sometimes they can't, and that's okay. What matters is whether you're willing to pick up the pieces and build something new from them. Whether you can admit fault without drowning in it, accept apologies without forgetting hurt, and move forward carrying both the damage and the hope. Rachel and I are building something new. It's smaller than what we had, more careful, full of acknowledged cracks. But it's ours, created intentionally by two imperfect people who heard each other and decided that didn't have to be the end of the story. I don't know if that counts as a happy ending. But it counts as an ending that doesn't make me feel hollow. And some days, that's enough. A final thought. If there's anything I learned from this entire experience, it's that being wrong doesn't give you license to become someone you wouldn't respect. You can be hurt and justified in that hurt without letting it reshape you into someone defined by bitterness. Consequences matter, both the ones others face and the ones you create for yourself when you choose revenge over healing. Rachel needed to understand that excluding me hurt. I needed to understand that making her understand through pain only created more pain. We both had to learn that relationships aren't competitions where someone wins and someone loses. They're partnerships where either everyone wins or everyone loses, and there's rarely anything in between. The hardest truth? Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you deciding you don't want to carry the weight anymore. It's choosing freedom over being right, peace over victory, connection over pride. And sometimes it means forgiving yourself first for how you handled being hurt. We all make mistakes. We all hurt people we love. The question isn't whether you'll face that moment, but what you'll do when it comes. Will you double down on the pain, or will you have the courage to choose something different? I'm still learning to choose differently. It's hard work, messy and uncomfortable. But it's better than the alternative, being right and being alone. Some prices are too high to pay, even for justice. I just wish I'd learned that before I made my sister pay it.